Hello friends, welcome. I'm Commissar Mark and today we are going to take a look at something new. C3 Augustus has released a new update which is currently on the unstable branch of Augustus, which adds to the game a new auxiliary unit, which is going to be light infantry or auxiliary infantry. This should fill a role between legionaries and cavalry in their usefulness, and I'm gonna show you on the screen right now what are their stats and what are stats of the other units, so namely the cavalry as well as legionaries. But in my opinion, the biggest competitor in terms of usefulness is going to be javelineers, as nor the auxiliary infantry nor the javelineers need weapons, but javelineers have been a very powerful unit, basically the meta to use, since it's a unit that has ranged attack, and so it can always just be able to inflict damage at a range before the enemy reaches your lines. And so I'm not sure if the light infantry is going to actually be that useful. Like, would I pick the light infantry instead of javelins if I have the option, and why would I do that? And today we are going to try and test it and see if there are reasons, and compare some fights and see how they turn out. I hope that's gonna be useful, and I would like this unit to be useful, as spamming one unit is not a good sign of very well balanced game. But keep in mind that a lot of these things have been like this since the inception of the game, and Augustus team did make some changes to the military, but they are trying to avoid doing anything too radical as not to upset the balance that was already there. But again, as in any RTS game, which C3 is a city builder, but its military is an RTS, you basically ranged units are very hard to balance, as again they can deal damage at a range, and that means that they are just useful, because even if they are sort of weak in melee, which javelins are, if you can just stack them, well, you kind Death Star all the enemies, and unless the attack is very big and you don't have any palisades in front or anything, your javelins could get overwhelmed. But in most situations, due to testing that has been done by, namely Samuel, aka Antetalos from C3 Haven, he did some tests before this update with cavalry, javelineers and legionaries, combinations of these forts, and what came out on top. And most of the time you are just better off using pure javelineers. The only situation when legionaries are to be included, but not mono-legionary army, just having a unit or two of legionaries, is when the legionaries can reach the fight before it happens, which is very rare since legionaries are very slow. You would have to build the fort very adjacent to the invasion point, which on custom maps is not possible, since usually you get attacked from various directions, and so if you build your legionary fort near one invasion point, it's gonna be very far away from the other invasion points on the map. And so on custom maps, most of the time this aspect is just not possible for legionaries to achieve. Even with a highway, I've had most fights where actually the legionaries just arrive when the enemy breaks and runs, and so that's another reason why javelineers were so dominant. In any case, we'll be taking a look at some tests ourselves today, and I'm gonna try to represent them as much as possible, the new infantry, and see how they compare. And I would really like it if we could make use of them. Also, in the future, we might see some other updates from the Augustus team, as there is still the military overhaul being discussed, but on the concrete details I cannot tell you right now, so let's hope they come up with an interesting way to implement more changes like this in the future. Before we get to the testing, I also need to mention that there has been a slight rebalance of some of the other units in this patch of the unstable branch, namely currently horses and the new auxiliary infantry can also attack adjacently like legionaries can. If you've ever observed a fight in Season 3 with legionaries, you notice that they almost seem to be able to attack at a slight range, and that's because they can hit things to the sides of them. Like, if a unit is facing an enemy, it can also hit someone to the left or right? But with cavalry, that was not the option. That's why cavalry was atrocious to micro before, where you needed to run them into the enemies constantly to make them engage, and it was very hard. With this patch, it should be much more simple, resulting in you being able to better use their bonus, which is attacking enemy rear, is now gonna be even better with cavalry, and it has potential to actually inflict some serious casualties, especially if enemies using a lot of ranged units. I would encourage you to now experiment with adding a single unit of cavalry and trying to use them against enemy skirmishers if they use them on that certain custom map, or campaign map for that matter, and see how that works. Cavalry is very cheap, so it doesn't matter if some of them die, but of course in Augustus there is a chain route mechanic where if your units break and run, it affects other of your units. Same thing goes on for the enemies, but for the player it can result in a chain route where you just lose everything if you drip feed your units and let them all die, so just be mindful of that. And on top of this change, there's been also a change where legionaries have a small buff. They now have +2 passive defense bonus, while losing 2 defense bonuses from column and double line, which means that now legionaries are just better base stats, slightly better. It's not a huge deal, but they're slightly better at resisting enemy attacks, even without using the specialized formation from the military academy and or the line formation where they needed to be stationary and enemies advance into them in order for the legionaries to benefit from their main bonus. Now they have part of that bonus normally, and so they are just slightly better overall, which I agree with. Legionaries were very underpowered, and making them better really is needed since they require weapons, and on some custom maps these weapons can be really expensive. So the game should encourage you to at least try to mix them in if possible, at least in my opinion. Otherwise it feels like the balance with the legionaries has been completely off the whole time, since again from the game design perspective the legionaries mechanic is the slowest unit that needs to be stationary before the enemies advance into them, which those two things just don't work together unless you can have the forts adjacent to the enemy invasion point, as I mentioned before. Okay, so this is a map called Cannae by Marius Brana. So this is a specifically a save from someone who sent it to me, needing help with something. They were playing Julius, I think, because they seem to not have global labor pool. I just added barracks and 4 forts of academy trained javelineers, and we have an invasion of 50 natives, and we'll see how they do, how many losses they take. I'm not gonna add any palisades in front, because obviously you would normally, but just for the sake of the test I'm not gonna do that. We are also not gonna have any towers, just straight up units against the enemy invasion. So let's do this. Yeah, Neptune's angry, we don't really care about that. And put our units here. So let's take a look. They are all having the correct formation. There are unfortunately sheep in the way, so I might actually set up over here instead, so we don't fight the sheep, because that could all affect the test, and we do not want that. I hope the sheep are not gonna move. So 50 natives. We'll see if our units are gonna be able to handle it. There's Spirit of Mars. It's gonna happen for the other test as well. Unfortunately, I couldn't prevent that. And so we've seen them off, and it looks like we've lost 4 units off of that unit, 6 here, so 10 in total. This is 16 plus 5, so 21 units were lost in total. And in this instance I've added a single fort of Auxilary Infantry, and we've replaced 1 unit of Javelineers with them, and so we have 3 units of Javelineers as well as 1 unit of Auxilary Infantry. It looks like it has less units, but that's because some are still being trained. They do still seem to have this column formation, which offers greater advantages against oncoming enemies. It is more against missile fire, I think, but it also provides defensive bonuses against enemies if they advance into them. So we'll position them here. We'll try to do our best to use them properly, which means putting them 1 tile in front and then Javelineers behind them. And natives are incoming, so we will see how that goes. I actually think maybe line here would be slightly better for all the infantry, but we'll give them the column just for the bonuses and see how it goes. They should be able to attack to the enemies on the sides as well, as I mentioned, so this could actually be good. Unfortunately, the sheep seem to be coming forward, which is not great. I hope they don't interfere with the fight. Plague in the city, Spirit of Mars as before, and this is 50 natives, same as before. And looks like the natives are trying to not advance into them. Now they are. Okay. Perfect. see what happens. And this is without any walls, without any towers, so in a proper city you would of course have a better defense than this. But already you can see we've lost 1 from the first legion, then we lost 3 Javelineers there, so 4, 2 infantrymen were lost, which is 6, and 3 from the last one, which means we've lost 9 units in total, and it's a significant difference. So for me, personally, I would actually say that adding a unit of infantry is not a bad idea, especially if we compare speed. Let's take a look at it. So we put them there. Yeah, I mean, these Javelineers are still faster, as you can see. But this is much speedier than, this is regular speed. Still speedier than the Legionaries. I've basically always used this instead of Legionaries. Because they seem to be pretty good. I did like how they fought, even if they let some enemies go past them in that column formation. If you had some palisades and only leave, like, in a realistic situation, you would probably have something like this going on as a choke point, and then some towers or whatnot. You could very well put the legionary, the auxiliary right here, and then put the Javelineers, stack them behind, right? And so they kind of guard that entrance. I think that would be pretty good, yeah. So in my eyes, good unit, good addition to Augustus, and I would be interested in some more thorough tests, but I don't have the time nor the really intention to really do like hundreds, which you would need to do to make a proper test along with towers and whatnot. Sam did that with the regular units, as I told you before, with the previous balance patch, and well, now the cavalry should be much better, but this auxiliary infantry, I don't like it. I think it's good, and I will be adding at least 1 unit to my normal compositions from this point on, so no more pure javelin spam. It's gonna be it from me for today. I hope this has been helpful. If there's gonna be any more interesting updates in the future, I'll let you know. And see you around. Bye.